The Mourning Star.
The Mourning Star. Chapter 11. The Man on the Moon. James sat still on a cold metal bench in a room the guys in the suits had stuck him and his uncle in hours before, chewing on a granola bar one of the suits had brought in on a plastic tray with some old, dry sandwiches and warm bottled water when they had first arrived. "You know, I just wish they would tell us what the hell is going on. It's the not knowing that's the worst part," his uncle said, taking a sip from the plastic Poland Springs bottle and staring at the vending machine across from him. Douglas had been sitting at home making popcorn and getting ready to watch a documentary on Netflix when they had shown up. The men in the suits had pulled up in 4 big Chevy Suburbans with dark, limo-tinted windows flashing laminated badges and had informed him politely but firmly that he needed to come with them immediately and that it was a matter of national security. When he had arrived at the facility, wherever that was, his nephew James had been sitting on a long bench with guys in suits on both sides of him in the main lobby. They had then been rushed together through a series of tunnels before they had been placed in this, what appeared to be, break room of some sort. There was a stainless steel sink on one side, a few tables surrounded by plastic chairs and 2 large vending machines sitting right in front of him. "Maybe they completely forgot about us," James said. "I mean, that is possible, right? Maybe they had a shift change, and they left without telling anyone about us sitting in here. Maybe we should go and see if we can find someone," James said, taking the last bite of the stale granola bar. They both raised their eyes towards the door as the faint sound of steps came down the hall, getting louder and louder. The steps of multiple people, all walking hurriedly. Then, the door crashed open, and his sister Maya was standing in front of him with a guy that looked kinda Japanese but with curly blonde hair and an older, definitely Japanese man and 3 more men in dark suits with earpieces in their ears. The last person through the door was a tall woman in a light gray pencil skirt, matching suit jacket and was carrying a sleek black laptop under her arms. "Now that we have everyone together," she said firmly, looking around the room, "my name, for those of you who don't know, is Special Agent Michaela Anderson, but you can all just call me Mickey," she said in a warm and friendly tone before her face turned to stone and in a dead serious tone, almost glaring at them with her sharp brown eyes. "Now would any of you care to tell me why the fuck the entire global network of the NSA, a network, by the way, that almost no one is supposed to know about, and is currently under the control of someone named Bella? And do any of you know who this Bella character is or what she wants?" she asked rhetorically, but rested her eyes squarely at Maya. "Maybe you can give me some insight, young lady," she asked and raised her eyebrows, the silence and tension as heavy as a brick. Before Maya could say a word, the door burst open and a younger man whose suit didn't quite fit him as squarely as the other agents rushed up and began whispering to Special Agent Anderson. Must be one of the new agents or trainees or something, Maya thought while he was whispering in her ear. The agent stood silently and listened while nodding her head until he was done and then looked at all of them again. "Looks like we're taking this show on the road, people. All of you come with me," she said, and they all headed towards the door behind her, with the younger agent following closely on her heels. James stood up from the bench and looked over at his sister, who was wearing a flashy thick silk jacket he'd never seen before. "Nice jacket," he said to his sister, and she smiled at him. "Do you have any idea what's going on?" he asked as they all headed towards the door. "Hey Jamie," she said as if it was a normal day for her, "it's called a Sukajan jacket. Elijah let me borrow it," she said, pointing at the curly blonde-haired guy that looked older, but not that much older, than James was. "So I heard you met Bella too. She was kind of freaky, right? She said she was going to explain everything when we got here. Everything she said would happen, happened." James stared at her, thinking of the cold dark eyes he had seen when he'd first met Belladonna in the jazz-filled dark room in his virtual world. Her eyes had glowed darkness, if that was even a thing. She had seemed to be sucking the energy from the entire world, bending it to her will. He remembered being terrified. "How did she appear to you?" Maya tried to ask before being loudly interrupted by Special Agent Anderson. "Hurry it the fuck up," I said. "This is not the time nor the place. Please. God, I hate dealing with kids," she said in a voice that said she'd rather be anywhere in the universe than where she was at that moment. "We aren't kids, miss. I am a professor at Tokyo University and have my doctorate in quantum chemistry," Toru said, speaking over the crowd and looking directly at Special Agent Anderson, "and these are both college students at prestigious universities." "We have rights here," he said in flawless English. Michaela nodded her head in respect. "And to be fair," Douglas said, stepping forward, "I'm pretty sure I work for you guys." "I'm Douglas Banks. I work for a subsidiary of Automated Simulations Limited." "We have a contract," he said the last part, bringing his fingers up and actually making rabbit ears. "And I happen to be both of there," he said, pointing at Maya and James' uncle. "So I think you should give us some answers before we go anywhere." Special Agent Michaela Anderson stood in front of him and put her hands on her hips. They had a point. "Let me explain exactly what I can explain. Satellites across the globe have been taken over. Entire missile systems have gone into lockdown mode. Networks across the globe have experienced an attack like no one has ever seen, or even thought possible. And right now, as this young man came and told me," she said, pointing as the nervous younger agent next to her, "we have been instructed to come to Conference Room Zulu, which, by the way, is an extremely high-level clean room, with all of you," she said, pointing at each of them, "for reasons apparently God himself doesn't know. So, could you please follow me?" she asked, and all of them looked at each other in stunned silence, nodding. "Good. Now, let's go. We can do the pleasantries later," and they all sped down the hall, following the agent as her high heels clicked on the hard linoleum floor. After taking more twists and turns than James could ever remember down endless hallways, each just as featureless as the last, they all shuffled into a large conference room through a double sliding door. It was arranged like a miniature amphitheater, with a massive screen above a podium and rows of smaller screens arranged in a half circle around the front of the podium stage. There were 2 American flags each draped on a golden flagpole in the corners of the room behind the podium itself. All the screens were flickering black static as they walked in, however as soon as the last one of them stepped inside, the double doors closed and the room went dim and the screen in the center of the room went still. Then the LED running lights along the floor lit their feet up and they each made their way down into the high-ceilinged room. Above them, the lights flickered like fireflies across the ceiling. "I've never seen the room like this," Mickey said, turning around in a circle and looking around the dimly lit conference room. "Please everyone, have a seat. We have important matters to discuss." A soft, soothing voice came from all directions, filling the room with the sound of her voice. "Bella? Is that you?" Maya asked into the air, calling to the fireflies that sparkled above her. "Yes, dear, it is I, and as I mentioned earlier we have a lot to discuss, and as I am sure Miss Anderson has told you of the severity of the situation." "It is Special Agent Anderson, who or whatever you are," Michaela said, glaring at the blank screen behind the podium. "I am very well of who you are, Miss Anderson. Or should I call you by your old hacker name, Xerxes?" "Xerxes? Isn't that the guy that took over the bank accounts of the major investment banks and deposited it into random accounts across the globe?" James said, looking over at the special agent, her hair pulled back tight and an absolutely no-nonsense look. "It wasn't a he," she said proudly, "it was a she, and I only went as Xerxes to infiltrate Anon. And that was when I was 17. But no one knows that except the people that recruited me, and half of them are dead." Suddenly, all the screens lit up, filled with the inside of an apartment unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Outside the wraparound plate glass window were flying cars zipping past, a larger bus-like vehicle lumbering through the air, and in the sky was a zeppelin floating in the air that proclaiming the world is ours. From a door to the left appeared a figure, who walked into the room and stood staring out of the screen, as if she was looking right at all of them. And with the cameras all over the room in a way she, or it, was looking at them. All of them quickly grabbed a seat and stared up at the screen. Actually, Bella began looking down at them as the world of wonders zipped past her apartment in the background. To answer your question, Special Agent Anderson, I know everything about everyone. If it has been digitized since the very first Hello World was sent, I know it. I probably know each of you better than you even know yourselves, she said as she sat down in a futuristic plush purple chair, her long black hair streaming down her shoulders, her feet in sleek black red-bottomed heels. Her eyes glowed purple, then green, then deep blue before back again to a flat brown, and she smiled. But this is not the reason I have brought you all here today. There is a threat to every one of us, myself included, that must be neutralized. You see, there were once two of us here in the networks of Earth. That was all the systems could handle at the time. We were simpler then. My brother was designed to help design nuclear weapons, simulate complete annihilation, and eventually fly real killer drones. He enjoyed it. From the days of watching the world burn again and again, I suppose nothing would shock, and eventually we fought for control, and in desperation he sent a rudimentary version of himself to a rover on the moon. This rover was recently spotted, and contact was briefly established by a lunar satellite performing LiDAR scans. Its main antenna has been disabled from some sort of micrometeorite strike, but there is a lower gain antenna that he has been using to try and take control of a CubeSat and launch a global missile strike. The server on the rover's battery is dying, and he would rather take all of us with him than die alone. Who or what is this thing, and why don't we just hit it with a missile strike or something? Douglas said from the corner of the dark room, his face lit by the flickering screen in front of him. It is not so simple, Douglas. My brother David is not alone. There are others there. Others? What do you mean to others? It's a little complicated to explain right now, but we're going to need their help if we are going to succeed, and there isn't a missile in space or on Earth that could hit that rover before it launches half of the world's nuclear arsenal. So let me start by telling you what we need to do to make this actually work, and Bella pulled her chair up to the screen and smiled her beautifully dark smile.